Withdrawal is a defense to the crime of conspiracy. So let's walk through exactly what this defense actually means. First of all, under majority rule, we're going to talk about different jurisdictions here, but under majority rule, the defendant may avoid liability for conspiracy by communicating notice of his or her intent not to participate in the conspiracy anymore. Or the defendant can inform police of the agreement in order to prevent the crime from happening. However, after an overt act, basically an act that goes beyond the agreement, is actually done, withdrawal is no longer a defense. So what does all this mean? First of all, when it boils down to the defendant avoiding liability for conspiracy under this defense, the defendant basically must tell his co-conspirators that, hey, I want out. I do not want to be part of this crime anymore. I am not only informing you my intent to get out of this crime, but I also have the option to snitch on you and inform the police of this agreement to avoid liability for this crime. So, for example, let's just say that Jay and Riley make an agreement to commit the crime of murder. They want to kill Israel. Riley has a change of heart. He wants out. He tells Jay that, hey, I know we made this agreement to commit the crime of murder against Israel. However, he's my friend. I love him. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not only telling you, Jay, that I am going to not participate in this murder anymore by communicating my notice to you that I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I also have the option, Riley has the option, to inform the police about the agreement he had with Jay, because that will allow the police to prevent the crime of murder from happening against Israel, because Riley told the police about the agreement. So the police will likely stop Jay, of course, and then Riley can raise his defense against conspiracy to murder with Jay against Israel in order to get out of this crime. That's under majority rule. However, the exception here is a big thing, though, is that after an overt act has happened, then Riley can no longer withdraw. So what does that part mean? So this last part here basically means that if Riley and Jay make this agreement to commit the murder against Israel, once Jay basically commits the act upon, makes an act that goes beyond the agreement, which is, let's say Jay buys a gun and he drives to Israel's house. That's an example of Jay committing an overt act that goes beyond the agreement that he had with Riley to kill Israel, because he did the act of buying a gun and he's driving towards Israel's home to commit the act of murder. So that's an example of an act that went beyond the agreement of killing Israel's Riley. It has been done because he bought the gun and he's driving to Israel's house. Once that's done, withdrawal is no longer a defense and Riley is basically screwed. He can't raise his defense because, again, Jay, the agreement between him and Jay has been, the overt act has actually happened beyond the agreement. Lastly, if Riley was in the common law jurisdiction, it is not a defense. So under the common law, withdrawal is not a defense, but it is a defense under the majority rule, and it is the defense for the model penal code jurisdictions and minority rule. So, minority rule in the minority of jurisdictions have a different rule here, basically saying that withdrawal is possible. The defendant acts voluntarily to thwart the success of the crime. So, basically, for example, not only would Riley have to try to thwart the success of the commission of the crime of Jay from killing Israel by calling the cops, taking away the gun, whatever Riley has to do to thwart the success of killing Israel, Riley cannot just simply communicate his notice of his intent to not participate in the murder. This first part will not count under the model penal code and minority rule. The second part here would be more necessary for Riley to abide by this rule, because him informing the police about the agreement will allow the police to thwart the success of the conspiracy he has with Jay, because the police obviously try to stop Jay from killing Israel. Therefore, if you have a fact pattern and it's under the model penal code or minority rule, if the defendant only communicates his intent, not going to work. He must do something more than that by trying to stop the crime from happening. A key example of that is the second part of this rule, the majority rule, is that informing the police of the agreement or doing something that will basically stop the crime from happening.